very kindly provided by my assistant. Matthew 2, verses 1 to 12. The Magi visiting the Messiah, from the New International Version, which has been anglicized. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "Oh, in Bethlehem, in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least amongst the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people, Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child, and as soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Amen. The story of the three kings. Is it three kings? How many kings were there? Anybody know? 1, 2, 3. 3 kings. Nobody knows. When did the kings appear? Was it on the night of his birth? It wasn't on the night of his birth. Anyone know when it was, perhaps? Christmas? Was it Christmas? Might have been a bit cold for the shepherds up in the hills, but nobody knows when it was. But they suspect it was probably in the summer, yeah? Because the sheep were up in the hills, grazing on the green grass. Nobody knows how many there were. Why do you think they say 3? And what were the gifts? And what's the symbolism of the gifts? Is it because children can make a lot of noise in an empty room? Is that what it is? Gold. What's the gold a symbol of? The king. What is frankincense? Yeah? Anyone know what myrrh is? For embalming purposes. In those 3 things, that we have the idea, built by tradition, that we had 3 kings, yes? That's why we have we 3 kings of Orient are, which we all sing in with, great gusto. I have a sermon. I'll return to it now. I just wanted to set the scene a little bit there, and I've got my glasses on that I can see with. You sometimes wonder when you start out on these things, what you're going to find out. And the big idea for me today was that Jesus needs to be responded to in this time of year with worship, not hostility or indifference. That's my big point today. That's what I want to teach you. I want to take you on a journey with me 2,000 years back. I want to share the story of two kingdoms that still exist and compete for our interests today. I'll set the scene. It's a familiar story, clouded by tradition. Didn't happen in a manger either. They were in a house, if you listen to what I said. It was a house that the king went to. Was it in Bethlehem? Does it matter? It said that the Bible in Micah said it was going to be in Bethlehem. The story didn't happen in a manger or when Jesus was a newborn. There was no chance encounters between the shepherds and the characters in this narrative. As the events unfolded during a time when Jesus was probably crawling, probably the age of some of these young people here, lovingly making a childish noise. Great. Not on the night of Jesus' birth did this take place, but within the first 2 years of Jesus' birth. And for some reason, whatever the reason may be, they might have remained in Bethlehem or not. I don't know. How far away from Jerusalem is Bethlehem? Anybody know? 6 miles. 6 miles. Yeah. According to Matthew 2:11, it was in a house. Mary and Joseph and their child Jesus lived in a house in a small, nondescript place called Bethlehem. Nothing more than a small village. Those who've been there, it's not a small village anymore. Important events occurred in Bethlehem. Anybody know what they were? Jacob buried Rachel there. Ruth met and married Boaz. And it was here that David, and this is the crucial point, the great king of Israel, grew up, and he tended sheep there. But it was only a small village, 5 or 6 miles outside of Jerusalem, cradled between 2 ridges. Those of you with young children here can imagine, can't you, that the life for Mary and Joseph had begun to return to normal. Gone were the shepherds. Although as they left, they had broadcast the news of Jesus' birth to everyone in the area. Wouldn't have been a lot of people. They probably would have heard about it in Jerusalem, but they wouldn't have ignored it, because what is Bethlehem? But in that small, insignificant town, life began to turn and return to normal. Let's hope it does in our house after today. They had found a house in Bethlehem in which to live. Jesus was growing. You can see him there, can't you? Able to do new things all the time. Make a noise, scream and shout, run around. And new parents, Mary and Joseph, would sit there amazed at how their little child, their little baby, was developing. Mary and Joseph would sit there and look at him and go, for reasons unknown to us, we're here in Bethlehem. They hadn't returned to Nazareth, where they were from. But life was beginning to return to normal for Mary, Joseph, and their growing infant, Jesus. It's amazing how challenging young children can be at that age, can't they? Between the ages of 0 and 2. The terrible twos, we call them, don't we? Let me introduce you to the characters in this story. King Herod. Was he a nice man? King Herod? A nice man? No? Hands up those who think King Herod's a nice man. Hands up those who... Oh, well done, Stephen. Hands up those who think he's a bad man. Well, it's complex. He actually was well liked by a lot of people. When he had a bit of drought and a bit of lack of food, he melted down his gold and he bought corn for his people. He was a nice guy in many ways. And to be honest, I'd always pictured him as sort of, equivalent to Queen Elizabeth. Well, maybe not. Maybe the first Queen Elizabeth. Sort of a regal, distinguished gentleman. And he had his good points. He constructed theatres and racetracks. He transformed and enhanced key cities in his area, adding remarkable features. And during the Great Famine of 25 BCE, as I said, he melted down his gold objects in the palace to buy food for the poor. He was a capable and clever warrior. He was an orator and diplomat, probably far better than me. He even began the reconstruction of the temple in Jerusalem. So he does have his good points. Don't we all have our good points? But Herod the Great was also, like some people we may know or read about, a despot, a megalomaniac. He could be cruel and merciless. He was incredibly jealous, suspicious and afraid for his own position and power. Herod took competition seriously. Oh yes. He appointed a man named Aristobulus, his brother-in-law in fact, to be high priest in Jerusalem. And when Aristobulus became too popular, guess what Herod did? He had his servants drown him in a pool, making it appear as an accident, some accident. Later, he had his wife killed, and then his mother-in-law killed, just before Jesus' birth. And he had 2 of his own sons killed after Jesus was born. And then he had a 3rd son executed. What a man. Complex, complicated. One of the greatest indications of his bloodthirstiness and insanity took place shortly after Jesus was born. Herod knew that he was going to die. He was ill. And so he ordered all the notable Jews from all parts of the country to come to him. And when they arrived, he locked them in the hippodrome that he'd built. Aware of his unpopularity, he commanded his sister and her husband to kill all the leaders in the hippodrome at his death, aiming for a national mourning instead of a celebration. He was a tyrant and a megalomaniac who quickly eliminated his rivals, including family members who posed a threat to him. So that's the first character in this story that Jesus had to contend with. Can you imagine that sort of a man around? Maybe a little bit like Putin, a little bit like Trump, a little bit like me. A man that we really can't like, or we can like perhaps. Maybe he was even amusing. The second set of characters in this story, the Magi. Magicians, maybe, we might call them. As we've said earlier, there wasn't 3 of them. There was any amount. We don't know. We don't even know how many there were. We don't know where they came from. Anyone know where they came from? The east. Where's the east? Which way is east? That way. Is east that way? So does that make that west? And that's south. Is that north? That's south that way, isn't it? Does anybody know where south is? North. Oh my gosh. So we don't know, do we? And nobody knew where they came from. Perhaps Iraq, perhaps Persia, perhaps Iran. Well, it was Persia them days, wasn't it? Nobody knows where they came from. Arabia, Babylon. And you know what? They weren't kings. They weren't kings. Anyone know what they were? Wise men. Yeah, wise men. They were astrologers, perhaps, or magicians, or wise men. They were uncircumcised, idol-worshipping heathens. Babylonians, magician astrologers. They were skilled in astrology and astronomy, practiced sorcery, and were known for their dream interpretation abilities. My mother used to do that. She used to read tea leaves. She was a gypsy. Read tea leaves and tell you your life story. You're going to have 6 children. Never happened. Magi, magicians, sorcerers, have grown to be important and powerful advisors in the Babylonian Empire. So perhaps that was who they were. And due to the presence of many Jews in their area, they were likely familiar with the Jewish texts known in the Old Testament. Yes, this is a story developing, isn't it? And guided by a star. These magi, they practiced old worship. Probably went down to that stone circle called Stonehenge, where they were here. And they came to Jerusalem asking, where is the King of the Jews who's been born? Somehow they had studied and determined that a king had been born in Israel. Perhaps they'd even read the prophecy of Balaam in Numbers 24:17. A star will come out of Jacob, a scepter will rise out of Israel. Imagine these magi, being powerful men from the east. They likely arrived with many soldiers and servants and a couple of camels or so. They had to look important. They had the look of prestige, wealth, and power. Imagine a group of foreigners surrounded by soldiers and servants in the streets of Jerusalem asking, where is the newborn king of the Jews? Imagine their surprise that nobody in Jerusalem seemed to know about this special baby's whereabouts 5 or 6 miles down the road. They wander around Jerusalem asking where he is. Where is he who is born King of the Jews? And you can imagine Herod, can't you? These people have turned up in his place, all rich and powerful looking people with all sorts of creatures around them, soldiers and camels and carrying gifts. Right. Cruel Herod, ready to execute anyone who was a threat to his kingdom. At this point, he is, guess what? Same age as me. 72, 3, 4, 5. I'm not going to tell you my real age. Yes. Competition for his crown. I'm going to have him killed. No way we're going to have him in Jerusalem. And yet they didn't know about him. And the Bible told them where he was going to be born. And he was disturbed. And all of Jerusalem with him. What does disturb mean? He was angry. He was hostile to this idea. And yet, in his sophisticated way, you can imagine how paranoid he was. Agitated. And he was agitated frequently. A lot of bloodshed in Jerusalem around his kingship. And he didn't stop to think carefully about who his enemies might be. He just had them put to death. Many innocent people could lose their lives. It's no surprise that when Herod was troubled, all of Jerusalem shook in that turmoil. And no doubt there was going to be some rebellion, bloodshed, and suffering. But there's a third set of characters included in this verse 4, the chief priests and teachers of the law, who perhaps should be advising him. The chief priests were a group of leading priests, including the current and previous chief priests. At the same time, this group was nothing more than a bunch of corrupt, religiously orientated politicians. Have you heard that before? They're both political and religious power. And Matthew also mentions scribes and teachers of the law. These were experts in the Old Testament and its oral tradition. This was a group of people that likely didn't get along well with the chief priests. No. But Herod asked these two groups, where's the Messiah going to be born then? And what did they respond? In Bethlehem. That's where he's going to be born. Do you all know the story after this? Verse 7 tells us that Herod met secretly with the Magi, asking them, when the star had appeared, tell me, where are they going to... When you get to the baby, can you come and let me know where he is? At the same time he was asking that, he was plotting to kill everyone under the age of 2 who was a male. It's toxic masculinity coming trying to be a king. How dare they? I'm the king. And that was typical behavior of Herod. He sent the Magi on their way, asking only that they return and tell him where this child was to be born. So he goes and he says, I'll come and worship him as well. And they leave. They find Jesus in a house in Bethlehem, not in a manger. And they worship Jesus Christ, the King of the Jews. That's who they go to worship. Imagine Mary and Joseph opening their front door. Imagine going home, opening the front door, to find a whole bunch of foreigners outside the door, astrologers, along with soldiers and servants standing there with a couple of camels. How would you feel? You'd have to give some water to the camels, wouldn't you? These men shocked everyone by bringing valuable gifts to Jesus. He was probably about a year old, maybe a little bit older. Herod, paranoid in his castle, delusional about how powerful he was, is just how many miles away? 5 or 6 miles away, waiting for more information to begin his plan of violence, just waiting for an opportunity to kill anyone who threatens his reign, even a little child making a noise in some house in Bethlehem, 5 or 6 miles down the road. Oh, what joy it was this morning to wake up to that. What's our place in this story? You lot there. What are we doing in this story? I see myself reflected in it. I can see all of you reflected in it, to be honest with you. There were some very different responses to the baby Jesus, weren't there? And this passage shows that there are 3 basic responses, and one was hostility. Herod was hostile to him. What does the word hostile mean? Perhaps he hated him. But he saw Jesus as a threat to himself. And you know what? Jesus can be a threat to many people. And in those days, some responded to Jesus with intense hatred for him. They were threatened by the fact that he was called a king. They wanted nothing to do with him. And even from the time that he was a baby, people wanted to kill him. Eventually, they did kill him. And Jesus said as an adult, at the time when even his own brothers didn't believe in him, the world hates me because I testify that what it does is evil. And make no mistake, hatred is not too strong a word, I don't think, for what people felt for him and felt about Jesus. They wish he'd never been born. Matthew 2:16 states that Herod was enraged when he realized the Magi had deceived him by not revealing Jesus' location. And the word for enraged is a strong word. We read that Herod lost control of his passion and became completely controlled by it. He knew that the child he was wanting to destroy was the Messiah. He arrogantly tried to kill God's very anointed one. You might not have the same paranoid and insane dislike of Jesus that Herod did, but be honest. Are you threatened by his rule? Does Jesus rule your life? Are you trying to do anything in your power to thwart his purposes in your life? To end his kingship? Where is Jesus in your life? How close are you to Jesus? Are you hostile to him? I hope not. Herod the Great left his marble palaces and millions of tons of huge stones. And Jesus, the King of the Jews, left living stones spread around the world. Today, Herod, well, his heritage lays broken and scattered beneath the sea and earth. Jesus' kingdom, on the other hand, will stand forever. Don't be indifferent to Jesus, please. Throughout history, there's been people who are indifferent to God. Some, like Herod and perhaps me, can think that God threatens me and the things I want to do, and I want to put him out of my mind and away somewhere else. Pay little attention to him and his way. What do they know? They don't accept or obey. Unless, at most, he is given lip service by some people, myself at times, I must admit to you. Indifferent people often end up against God. As someone said, indifference to God is simply hatred that is concealed and rejection that is delayed. It's easy to be indifferent to God, as we learned from our youth the other week, even at Christmas. One can see all the gospel accounts of Christmas and still celebrate it as if it's only about Santa Claus, the Nutcracker, Strictly, and gifts. Where every year I'm tempted to capitulate to the trivial pursuits of Christmas. Gift giving, entertaining, overcommitting, overspending. And we end up sometimes becoming indifferent to the true star of Christmas, Jesus Christ. Our third response should be worship. Some, like Herod, are hostile to him. Some, like the chief priests and scribes, are indifferent to him. Some, like the Magi, worship him. They saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. They opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Matthew 2, verse 11. They offered Jesus expensive and uncommon presents, fell down and worshipped him. These uncircumcised, idol-worshipping Babylonian astrologers, unfamiliar with the scriptures, were honored to pay homage to the King of Kings. And our modern culture has turned the Christmas spotlight on holiday heroes like Santa, Kirsty Allsop, maybe, and the local B&M shop. We can get some really nice things cheap. We've deified the pursuits of gift-giving, entertaining, and decorating. While there's nothing wrong with these in themselves, is that what Christmas is about for you? To make this season meaningful, we must not be hostile to Christ or indifferent to him. We must focus on and worship the true star of Christmas, Jesus Christ, God with us. Those who missed His Majesty's arrival, Mark Lucada said that night, missed it not because of evil acts or malice. No, they missed it because they simply weren't looking 5 or 6 miles down the road. And little has changed in the last 2,000 years, has it? But we may, like the Magi, celebrate the birth of a king and worship him, bringing him precious gifts. I'm a grateful husband. I'm a father. I'm a grandfather. And I'm a member of Yardley Wood Baptist Church, Billesley, Birmingham. I love learning. I love teaching. I love writing and encouraging. I'm on a lifetime quest to become a humble, gracious, old man. Amen. In Jesus Christ's name.